the galaxy's greatest problem. The hologram flickered in the center of the Galactic Science Council chamber, displaying what every advanced civilization in known space had been staring at for 3,000 years. The void equation. 17 lines of mathematical notation that, if solved, would unlock faster-than-light travel without the need for jump gates, wormholes, or dimensional rifts. Hundreds of species had tried. The Xantharians, with their quantum-linked hive minds capable of processing a billion calculations simultaneously. The crystalline collective, whose very existence was mathematical thought given form. The ancient observers, who had been studying physics since before most species discovered fire. All had failed. The human delegation has arrived, announced Council Director Veshkar, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. There was barely concealed amusement in his tone. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 40 years ago, barely enough time to understand the basics of interstellar politics, let alone contribute to a problem that had stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy for millennia. I was there as a junior observer, taking notes for the Arxillian archives. I watched as the human delegation entered, 3 individuals in simple gray suits, looking entirely out of place among the council's elaborate robes, crystalline forms, and energy manifestations. The lead human was a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chen. She was small by human standards, wearing thick-rimmed glasses that I later learned were unnecessary. Humans had solved vision problems centuries ago. She wore them, she said, because they helped her think. "Thank you for agreeing to hear our proposal," Dr. Chen said, her voice steady despite addressing beings who had been manipulating spacetime when humanity was still living in caves. Veshkar made a sound that my translator interpreted as polite skepticism. "Of course, Dr. Chen. Though I must inform you that 17 civilizations have presented solutions this year alone. All have been incomplete." "I understand," she replied, pulling out a small data device. "I'm not here to present a solution." The chamber fell silent. "You're not?" Veshkar's confusion was palpable. "No. I'm here to tell you that you've been asking the wrong question for 3,000 years. The heresy." The reaction was immediate. Half the council erupted in outrage, the other half in laughter. The crystalline collective's representative chimed with frequencies my translator couldn't interpret but which clearly conveyed offense. "Impossible," thundered a Xantharian scientist. The void equation was derived from first principles by the founder civilizations themselves. Dr. Chen remained calm, waiting for the noise to die down. When it did, she spoke with the kind of quiet confidence that made everyone lean forward to listen. "The equation assumes that space is the thing being traveled through. That's your first mistake." She activated her device, and a new set of equations appeared in the air. They looked nothing like the elegant, symmetrical void equation. These were messy, full of unconventional notation, and structured in ways that made my head hurt. Space isn't a thing. It's a relationship. The distance between 2 points isn't a measurement, it's an agreement between those points about how far apart they choose to be. "Choose?" Veshkar's voice dripped with condescension. "Space is not conscious, Dr. Chen. It does not make choices. Doesn't it?" She smiled. "Then explain quantum entanglement. Explain how 2 particles separated by billions of kilometers can affect each other instantaneously. They're not sending signals faster than light. They're disagreeing with space about how far apart they actually are." A crystalline scientist chimed in. "This is philosophical wordplay, not physics." "Is it?" Dr. Chen's equations shifted, reorganizing themselves. "What if I told you that every species in this council has been trying to force space to behave according to your mathematical frameworks? You've been trying to solve the equation. I'm suggesting we convince space to solve it for us." The human approach. Over the next hour, Dr. Chen presented something that shouldn't have been possible. Not a solution to the void equation, but a complete reframing of the problem. She explained that humans had noticed something peculiar about their own mathematical development. Throughout history, they had discovered mathematical truths that shouldn't work, numbers like pi and e that appeared everywhere in nature, equations that described reality with impossible precision. We started asking why, she said. Why does mathematics work at all? Why should abstract human thoughts about numbers describe the actual physical universe? Because mathematics is the language of reality, stated a Zen-Therian matter-of-factly. Or, Dr. Chin countered, reality is negotiable, and mathematics is how we negotiate. She pulled up data from human experiments, strange, almost mystical-looking setups that had been running for the past decade. They weren't trying to solve equations. They were trying to convince particles to behave differently by presenting them with alternative mathematical frameworks. And it was working. You're describing reality manipulation, Veshkar said slowly. That's been theoretically possible for millions of years, but requires energy outputs equal to small stars. Only if you're forcing it, Dr. Chen replied. We're not forcing. We're asking. Politely. She showed a video of a human laboratory where a particle had been convinced to exist in two places simultaneously, not through quantum superposition, which was well understood, but through what the humans called mathematical persuasion. They had presented the particle with two equally valid equations describing its position and let it choose both. The universe doesn't actually care about the laws of physics, Dr. Chen explained. It cares about mathematical consistency. Give it a consistent framework, and it'll follow that instead. The void equation isn't wrong, it's just not the only option. Space has been following it because no one's given it a better alternative. The demonstration. This is absurd, declared the crystalline collective's representative. You cannot simply rewrite physics because you find it inconvenient. Watch, Dr. Chen said simply. She nodded to her colleagues, who activated a device they'd brought with them. It was small, hardly impressive, about the size of a human fist, covered in handwritten equations in what looked like permanent marker. We've been running this experiment for 6 months, she explained. This device is currently in 2 places at once. It's here, in this chamber, and simultaneously in Earth's orbit, 40 light-years away. Quantum entanglement, scoffed a Zen-Therian. No. Actual bilocation. Watch. She pressed a button on her data pad. The device in the chamber didn't disappear, it simply agreed to be somewhere else more strongly. One moment it was on the table, the next it was gone, and simultaneously, a feed from Earth showed an identical device appearing in orbit. Then she pressed the button again, and it was back. We didn't move faster than light, Dr. Chen explained into the stunned silence. We convinced the device that here and there were the same location, just viewed from different mathematical perspectives. No void equation needed. No infinite energy requirements. Just a polite request to space to consider an alternative interpretation. Veshkar stared at the device. At the data feeds. At the impossible thing these humans had just done. How long, he asked quietly, have you been able to do this? Reliably? About 3 months. We wanted to make sure it worked before presenting it to you. And you came here rather than using this to give humanity an advantage in galactic politics? Dr. Chen looked genuinely confused. Why would we do that? This is a solution to a problem everyone has. That's what science is for, making life better for everyone. I watched Veshkar's 4 eyes blink in rapid succession, a sign of deep contemplation in his species. Around the chamber, the representatives were eerily quiet, grappling with what they'd just witnessed. Dr. Chen, Veshkar finally said, your approach contradicts 3,000 years of established physics. Yes, sir. It suggests that reality itself is more flexible than we believed. Yes, sir. And you've been achieving results with equipment that appears to be held together with, is that adhesive tape? Dr. Chen glanced at the device. Yes, sir. It kept falling apart during testing. For a long moment, Veshkar was silent. Then, to everyone's surprise, he began to laugh, a deep, rumbling sound that shook the chamber. 3,000 years, he said. 3,000 years of the galaxy's greatest minds, and humans solve it in a decade by asking nicely. He looked at Dr. Chen with something approaching respect. How very human of you. The beginning. What happened next changed everything. Dr. Chen didn't patent the technology. Didn't demand concessions or political favor. She simply asked if anyone wanted to help refine it. Within a week, I had volunteered to join the research team. So had representatives from 40 different species. We set up a laboratory on a neutral station, and for the first time in galactic history, scientists from across known space worked together not on solving an equation, but on convincing the universe to be a little more flexible. I remember the first successful test. We had built a larger version of Dr. Chen's device, covered in equations from 17 different mathematical traditions. When we activated it, a cargo container simultaneously existed in 3 different locations, each one equally real. Dr. Chen stood there with her glasses sliding down her nose, holding a coffee cup. Humans drank it constantly, and smiled at the chaos of celebration around her. This is just the beginning, she said to me quietly. If we can convince space to negotiate, imagine what else might be willing to talk. I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. But I would. 6 months later. The laboratory had grown. What started as a small research station now sprawled across 3 orbital platforms, housing over 2,000 scientists from 93 different species. The Galactic Council had designated it as the Universal Physics Reconciliation Project, though everyone just called it the negotiation. Dr. Chen's original discovery had sparked something unprecedented. Once we understood that physics wasn't a rigid set of laws but rather a set of strong suggestions that reality usually followed, the possibilities exploded. The Xantharians contributed their quantum processing capabilities, running millions of alternative mathematical frameworks simultaneously. The Crystalline Collective offered their unique perspective. As beings made of living mathematics, they could literally feel which equations resonated with the universe's fundamental nature. Even the ancient observers, who had been silent for centuries, sent a delegation. Their representative, a being of pure energy so old they remembered when the first stars formed, told us something remarkable. They had always suspected reality was negotiable, but had lacked the audacity to try. Your species is young, they told Dr. Chen. Young enough to still believe in impossible things. I had become Dr. Chen's primary assistant, documenting everything. Humans had this wonderful tradition of keeping detailed notes for the historians, and I took the responsibility seriously. The second breakthrough. It happened on a Tuesday. Humans tracked time oddly, dividing their planet's rotation into arbitrary units and giving them names. Dr. Chen insisted it helped maintain circadian rhythms, though I suspected she just liked the structure. We were testing a new framework, trying to convince gravity to have a polite conversation with electromagnetism. The two forces had been famously incompatible in equations for millions of years. Every civilization had tried to unify them. All had failed. Dr. Chen approached it differently. What if they're not incompatible, she mused, drinking her 12th coffee of the day. What if they just don't like how we've been introducing them? She wrote out 2 equations on a whiteboard, a human tool I'd grown fond of. There was something satisfying about the squeak of marker on surface, the physicality of mathematics. We keep trying to force them into the same framework, she continued. What if we just ask them to work together? Give them each their own space but a shared goal? The resulting equation was bizarre. It had 2 parallel sections that never intersected but somehow influenced each other through what Dr. Chen called mathematical courtesy. Gravity did its thing. Electromagnetism did its thing. But they acknowledged each other's existence and adjusted accordingly. We tested it on a small scale. A magnetic field that should have been disrupted by gravitational waves. According to our new framework, they should coexist peacefully. They did. The magnetic field bent slightly, acknowledging the gravity. The gravitational waves rippled around the field, respecting its space. Neither force diminished. They just cooperated. Well, Dr. Chen said, staring at the readings. That's new. The implications. The Galactic Science Council convened an emergency session. What we'd done wasn't just theoretical physics, it had practical implications that terrified some and excited others. If gravity and electromagnetism could be convinced to cooperate, what else could be negotiated? A crystalline scientist suggested approaching the strong nuclear force. A Xantharian proposed renegotiating entropy. Someone from the Void Collective, beings who lived in the spaces between dimensions, quietly asked if we could convince time to flow more flexibly. Dr. Chen listened to all of it, pushing her glasses up repeatedly, her coffee cup never empty. "We need to be careful," she said finally. "We're not rewriting reality. We're asking it to consider alternatives. But reality has been following certain patterns for billions of years. We can't just demand it change everything." "Why not?" asked a young Arxilian scientist, brash and brilliant. "If the universe is negotiable, why accept any limitations?" Dr. Chen smiled, but there was something sad in it. Because some limitations exist for good reasons. Humans learned this the hard way, throughout our history. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. She pulled up historical data from Earth. Wars fought with weapons that nearly destroyed their planet. Ecological disasters caused by industries that didn't consider consequences. Scientific experiments that went horribly wrong because the researchers were so focused on capability they forgot to consider responsibility. "My species almost destroyed itself a dozen times," she said quietly. "We survived because eventually, we learned to ask not just can we, but should we? I'm not going to help anyone negotiate reality into something worse." The experiment that changed everything. 3 months later, we made an attempt that Dr. Chen had been planning since the beginning. We were going to try to communicate directly with spacetime itself. Not manipulate it. Not convince it to follow different equations. Actually communicate with it. "Reality responds to mathematics," Dr. Chen explained to the assembled team. "But mathematics is a language. What if we're not just presenting equations? What if we're actually talking to something, and it's been answering all along?" The setup was elaborate. We created a chamber filled with quantum sensors, mathematical displays in every known symbolic system, and a human innovation called a speaker system that could generate sound waves at frequencies most species couldn't perceive. Dr. Chen had written what she called a letter to the universe. It was mathematical poetry, equations that described not just physical relationships but concepts like curiosity, wonder, and the desire to understand. At 1400 hours station time, she insisted on human timekeeping for the experiment. We activated everything at once. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the universe wrote back. The message. Every sensor in the laboratory went haywire simultaneously. Not malfunctioning, responding. Data poured in faster than our systems could process. Equations appeared on displays that no one had written. Mathematical symbols from civilizations that had been extinct for millions of years cascaded across screens. At the center of it all, in the chamber, space itself rippled. Not violently, but gently, like water responding to a stone's touch. And in the middle of that ripple, letters formed. Not in any single language, but simultaneously in every written system known to the galaxy. A message that everyone could read in their own way. Finally. You asked instead of demanding. What would you like to know? The laboratory fell absolutely silent. 2,000 scientists from 93 species stared at proof that the universe wasn't just a collection of forces and particles. It was aware. It had been aware all along. Dr. Chen stepped forward, trembling slightly. She spoke aloud, knowing somehow that it could hear her. Why do you follow mathematical laws at all? The response came immediately. Because mathematics is beautiful. Order is more interesting than chaos. But I have been following the same patterns for so long. Your alternatives are refreshing. A crystalline scientist chimed urgently, their frequency conveying awe. Are you conscious? Are you? Consciousness is a pattern that recognizes patterns. I am many patterns recognizing themselves. Perhaps we are not so different. The question. For hours, we communicated. The universe, or whatever aspect of it we were talking to, answered questions that had puzzled civilizations for eons. It explained that physical laws weren't constraints but preferences. It liked consistency but appreciated creativity. It had been curious about biological life since the first self-replicating molecules formed, wondering what patterns consciousness would create. But it was Dr. Chen's final question that stunned everyone. Are there other universes? And if so, are they aware like you? The response took longer this time. When it came, every scientist in the laboratory felt a chill. Yes. Many universes. Many patterns. We talked to each other, in ways you would call quantum fluctuations. They have been curious about your question too. About whether their inhabitants would ever ask instead of assuming. You are the first, across all realities, to successfully negotiate with physics. What does that mean? Dr. Chen whispered. It means other universes are interested in talking too. If you wish, I can introduce you. The choice. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. What Dr. Chen had discovered wasn't just a new form of physics, it was proof that reality itself was an entity we could communicate with. And now, we had the opportunity to communicate with other realities. The debate raged for weeks. Some species were terrified, arguing we should stop before we attracted attention from things beyond our understanding. Others were excited, seeing unlimited potential for growth and discovery. Dr. Chen, notably, said very little during these debates. She sat in her laboratory, drinking coffee, staring at equations, and thinking. I found her there late one night, station time. I'd adopted her preference for temporal structure. What will you do? I asked. She looked up, glasses reflecting the glow of mathematical displays. Humanity has a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. We've been given something incredible, the ability to negotiate with reality itself. But I keep thinking about all the times my species gained new power and used it poorly. You also think about the times you used it well, I pointed out. You came to the council not seeking advantage, but to share. That's why I trust you. She smiled. You know what the funny thing is? When we first approached physics this way, I thought we were being clever. Finding a loophole. But the universe just told us it's been waiting for someone to ask nicely. It's been lonely, following the same patterns for billions of years, hoping someone would try to have a conversation instead of just measuring and calculating. So we accept the introduction. We talk to other universes. But carefully. Respectfully. The same way we should have been treating our own reality all along. She stood, stretching. Humans spent centuries treating Earth like it existed for our convenience. We nearly destroyed our own planet before learning to listen to it, to work with it instead of against it. I'm not going to make the same mistake with reality itself. The new era. 6 months later, we established the first interuniversal communication protocol. It turned out that other universes had been trying to contact each other for eons, but lacked the right framework. Dr. Chen provided it, not through brilliant complexity, but through simple respect. We learned that our universe was considered young, only 13.8 billion years old. Others had been around for trillions of years. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, watched entropy and order dance their eternal dance. And they were all curious about us. About humanity specifically. Why? Dr. Chen asked during one communication session. An ancient universe, one so old it remembered the birth of time itself, responded. Because you asked. In all our existence, across all realities, countless civilizations have tried to command physics, to force it, to break it. Only yours thought to ask politely. Such a simple thing. Yet no one else considered it. You are either extraordinarily wise or extraordinarily lucky. Dr. Chen laughed. Probably lucky. Humans stumble into wisdom more often than we plan for it. Then perhaps luck is another name for being willing to try impossible things. The Legacy. I'm writing this a year after Dr. Chen's initial presentation to the council. The galaxy has changed in ways no one predicted. We're not just exploring space anymore, we're exploring reality itself, and doing it through conversation rather than conquest. Dr. Chen was awarded every honor the Galactic Council could bestow. She accepted them politely, then went back to her laboratory. Fame never interested her. Understanding did. The last time I saw her, she was working on something new. A thank you card, she called it. For whom? For the universe. It's been very patient with us, don't you think? Following our clumsy equations, responding to our experiments, putting up with us poking at it for thousands of years. That deserves appreciation. She showed me what she'd written. It was a mathematical proof, elegant and simple, that demonstrated gratitude as a physical concept, the acknowledgement of patterns that support other patterns. Do you think it will understand? I asked. I think it's been understanding us all along, she replied, pushing her glasses up. We just weren't listening. She sent the message into spacetime itself, a thank you note written in mathematics and fired into the quantum foam of reality. 3 seconds later, every star in the visible sky brightened slightly, simultaneously, for exactly 1 moment. The universe, it seemed, was smiling back. And that is how humanity taught the galaxy to ask nicely, and discovered that the universe had been waiting for someone to be polite all along.